The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. This is Matt Cohen over at ProWorld. I'm the CEO here, and I'd like to welcome you all to our webinar on making money with sublimation. Today, leading our webinar, we're very proud to have Jimmy Lamb from Sawgrass. Jimmy is the manager of education over at Sawgrass, and in case you don't know, Sawgrass has really been the pioneer, the one that invented the sublimation inks that are used in this industry to make the mugs, the iPhone cases, the T-shirts, and the frames, and all the things that can be made using the sublimation process. Just an FYI, the webinar is going to run about 45 minutes to an hour. It's packed with really great and useful information on how to make money with sublimation, and I think you'll enjoy it. And at the end of the webinar, you'll be able to ask Jimmy and myself some questions. The chat, Jimmy will go over that. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jimmy and let him do his thing. So, Jimmy, take it away.
Again, I am Jimmy Lamb. I am the Manager of Education with Sawgrass Technologies, and we're the guys who manufacture the sublimation inks that you would buy from ProWorld. Sublimation expands your reach. Depending on what you're doing already, sublimation is a really good way to actually reach into new markets, maybe with some new products, some new ideas, some new services. Because I know a lot of you have backgrounds of doing some form of decoration already. You're probably already in business, and anytime you see something that you can expand out with a little bit, especially if it's very reasonable in price, you will certainly see an opportunity there that you can build with. Now, you may be starting from scratch, and that's okay as well. But I'm telling you, sublimation is a great way to be able to expand your reach into a lot of different markets, okay? I started my decoration career as an embroiderer, okay? And as an embroiderer, I was somewhat limited in what I can do. If you look at this picture here on the screen, you'll see there's one item in the very back that's embroidery. Yet my customers wanted to buy all these other things. So they'd come to me and I could do what? I could do embroidery on maybe a small chest area of a polo shirt and maybe a hat, and that was about it. And then it would leave me and they would go somewhere else to get, for example, screen printing, okay, or awards or promotional products or anything else that you can imagine that I couldn't do. So the danger in that, of course, is that people left me and went somewhere else. But when they went somewhere else to get the other things, what if that person could also do what it was I was doing, in this case embroidery? They may not ever come back to me. So looking at being able to do some of these types of processes expanded my reach. In fact, I could go back to when I started adding digital to every single customer I had and suddenly say, hey, listen, I can do your awards, I can do your signs, I can do your promotional products, I can do your gift items, I can do all these other unique things. So when you look there on that screen, that picture, it really does sum it up. If you're an embroiderer, you could do this. Sublimation adds all that. If you're doing screen printing, or maybe you have direct-to-garment printer or offset printing or something to that effect, maybe you're doing things similar to this, but now suddenly sublimation adds all that. So please remember that. Your customers are buying a lot of things. Maybe they're just not buying it all from you. So what exactly is sublimation? It's a word that some people really understand what it is and some people really don't. Most people think it's a form of printing, and that's a good way to describe it. It is a form of digital printing. Sublimation is quite unique, though, in the way that it handles the printing process, because when you really talk about true digital printing, things like direct-to-garment printing, for example, or really almost any type of ink that we're running through an inkjet printer, those print inks have to bond to the surface of the item that's being decorated. And in order for that to happen, typically there's a chemical additive in the ink called a binder, which helps that ink actually bind to the surface of whatever it is we're printing on. Okay, that's very standard. Even screen printing uses that. But in the world of sublimation, we don't use binders because sublimation works on a molecular process. Okay, it's truly a chemistry type of process more than it is a printing process. With sublimation, if you actually take a look at the sublimation ink, and you can call it ink, that's fine, we call it ink too. It's actually dye. There's a little difference between dyes and inks. But If you take a look at that, you would think it looks just like any other type of ink, but it's actually very different in how it works. We're going to load that into an inkjet printer. We're going to print it out on a transfer paper designed for sublimation, and we're going to take that piece of transfer paper over to a heat press, lay it on top of the item we want to decorate, close the two up like a sandwich, and when we apply 400 degrees, approximately 400 degrees, the sublimation dye itself turns into a gas. Okay. Now the second thing that happens, because this is a two-part process, is the item that we decorate has to be either a polyester or a polymer. And in most cases, it's a polymer coating. For example, a wooden plaque. You can't sublimate wood, but you can have a polymer coating on the plaque, and you're sublimating the coating. Okay. Because sublimation only bonds with polymers and polyesters. Okay. Because it works at a molecular process. So when we put these items together in the heat press, and we apply that temperature, 400 degrees, again, our sublimation dye turns into a gas, and the polymer actually opens up. Polymers are basically, think of little microcells, looking almost like clamshells, and they open up under that temperature to receive the gas. So the actual sublimation gas goes into the polymer. When we remove the item from the heat press and it cools down, those polymers close back up and they contain the dye within the polymer. See, we didn't put it on the surface. We put it inside. Now that makes it very unique because when I sublimate something, we pretty much cannot peel it off. Okay? If you actually go print a picture using traditional inks onto anything, you take your fingernail and scratch it, you'll start scratching that ink off. But if you sublimate that same picture onto something designed for sublimation and you try to scratch it off of your finger, you won't be able to do it because it's in the surface instead of on the surface. Interesting enough, when we put it onto apparel, of course we can only do polyester, when we wash it, it will not crack, peel, or fade. Okay, very impressive stuff, sublimation. Sublimation Advantage, quick setup. Okay, that's always important. Millions of colors, literally millions of colors, and you may be in a process right now that has very limited colors. No special skills required. If you have done anything with screen printing, you understand what color separations are. We don't have to do that either. And it becomes an ideal short-run production solution. We can do 1 piece, 2 pieces, 6 pieces, 100 pieces. Okay, but the idea is because we can set it up so quick, we can do small quantities very economically, and we can turn it fast. Okay, and we're going to look a little deeper in that as we go. Now, the Polymer Connection. You know, you hear that, and a lot of people immediately start saying, uh-oh, polymers, polyesters, that's limiting me. There's not that much I can sublimate after all. That's not true. We start looking at products for sublimation. They're either a natural polymer or have a polymer coating. And these coatings typically are applied by professional companies using professional computer-controlled machinery to get a really good finish. Now, when you hear polymer coating, it sounds like it's rubbery or something. It's not. It's amazing. If you take a metal panel that has been designed for sublimation, they put a polymer coating on it, if you touch the surface of that metal, it just feels like metal. You don't feel any kind of rubbery type of thing. Okay? There's literally about 1,000 different blanks out there that have been created for sublimation. And you can see just a small sample on the screen. All of these items have been sublimated. All of them had a polymer coating. And you can see that we have, this is a case of wooden plaque. This is solid wood with a polymer coating on there. We have some metal products here. This is actually acrylic. There's glass products. There's stone products. There's plastic products. There's a wide variety of different things out there, and so don't feel like it's a limited aspect, that polymer connection. That polymer is what makes it so durable, and also sublimation is typically considered a high-def process because of the fact we can do top quality, high precision, very vibrant color type of images onto such a wide variety of different things. That brings us to picture-perfect reproductions. You know, a lot of times you don't think about the importance of being able to put pictures on things, okay? Because if you're not in servicing markets where people care about pictures, you probably never thought about that. The reality is sublimation can produce, as I was just saying, high-definition images such that we actually have professional photographers making use of sublimation because it's that good, okay? Now, again, that may not interest you, that aspect. What do you care about professional photography? Well, first of all, it is a very viable marketplace because there's a lot of really good margins in the pro photo marketplace, okay? But just on everyday things, when you start to add a picture, you start to enhance the value of the item. And when you enhance the value of the item, the perceived value goes up, Okay? Perceived value is what allows you to set your prices at a higher level to get higher margins. I mean, I teach a lot of classes on pricing, and people really get fixated in formulas, but the reality is your margin is your marketing. Okay? Margin comes from marketing. Okay? And when you have a higher perceived value, you can charge more money, you can make more money. That's important things to consider. And you can find it in virtually everything you do. You can add a photo, believe it or not. I do a lot of corporate products where we find a way to put a photo in there to help enhance it. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're looking at sublimation. Finally, we have sublimated apparel. We can only sublimate polyester, okay, because it only bonds with polyester, it does not bond with cotton. Can you do blends? Yes, you can. When you sublimate on a blend, what you're going to get, if it's a poly-cotton blend, most common being 50-50, is the image will look somewhat faded or washed out, okay? And that's important to understand. It's not going to have the same brilliance as if it's 100% polyester, because the sublimation's only bonding with the polyester aspect of that blended shirt. Now, that can actually be used to your advantage, because there's a lot of markets where that particular look is actually very much in demand. And this is another example of marketing, okay? The words you use are so important, because if we look at a faded shirt and you call it faded, it sounds cheap, okay? On the other hand, if you use a word like retro, okay? Retro gives you the concept of this is worth more. Okay, so that's an important thing to do. If you're talking to a customer, you can say to them, hey, listen, I got a great idea for you. We have this special process which will give you the retro look, which is really hot, right? Okay, by doing that, you've automatically kind of positioned this as it's worth more money. Guess what? The cost for you to sublimate the 50-50 shirt versus the 100% poly shirt is exactly the same as far as materials cost, okay? And in all likelihood, that 50-50 shirt's cheaper anyway than the 100% poly shirt, but you're able to charge more because you raise the perception. This is just how marketing works, okay? Kind of keep those things in mind as we move through. Now, in the world of polyester, too, you might be thinking, well, you know, polyester, slick, silky, shiny. My customer doesn't like that. Hot, uncomfortable. And I remember those types of shirts, okay, when I was, you know, in a younger generation at one time. Polyester was synonymous with that exact description. And today, that type of shirt is actually come back around and is very popular, especially for the youth set, especially in the world of athletics. But we've seen a change in how most of our polyester is manufactured. Most of our polyester products are what we call poly-performance, and the performance aspect means it has moisture wicking capabilities. Therefore, it becomes a much more comfortable shirt to wear, whether it's hot or cold, because it's just more comfortable because it pulls moisture away from your skin. So if it says poly-performance, then it does have the moisture wicking capabilities. Those products tend to be a little more pricey, okay? But again, using keywords, if you describe your poly performance products as the same type of shirts that Under Armour sells, then people immediately start to connect it with Under Armour, okay? And, you know, an Under Armour t-shirt starts at $25 and goes up. So, you know, again, that can help you in some of that pricing world. But if you still have a customer who doesn't like the slick, silky look, guess what? We have another type of polyester out there called spun polyester that looks and feels like 100% cotton. Okay, so there's all kinds of new technology. There's a lot of things going on. Pretty cool stuff. Just kind of keep up with it, and you know, sublimation might be the ticket for the decoration aspect. Bottom line, we got tons of products, applications, and markets out there we can pursue with sublimation. That's what makes it so unique, is all the cool stuff that we can do, because we can put that many more products in front of each and every one of our customers. Something you'll see a little bit later in the webinar. I'm going to show you some packages of things that target different markets. Okay. Now, what I like to do is kind of walk you through real quick. I know from some of the questions coming in that some of you are already doing sublimation, so you understand this, and some of you are not. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to briefly walk you through the production process of sublimation for those of you who really don't understand how it works, have never seen it, you know, in process. We call it a three-step process: create, print, press. Kind of looks like this. 3 components: a computer, a printer capable of delivering sublimation dyes, and a heat press, and a good quality heat press. I can't recommend that enough. You know, some applications you just need basic heat to melt an adhesive to make something stick to something. But in sublimation, the heat and the pressure have to really fit within a certain narrow margin of error. And if we get these things off, it can affect our sublimation. So I always say if you're going to get into sublimation, spend the money to get the right heat press right from the beginning, okay? Because it's very sensitive to changes in temperature and uneven pressure. You buy a good use system, Pro World has plenty of them, then you're going to have something that's going to last you a long time and consistently give you the right output, okay? Now, back to the printer for just a minute. This is not a situation where there is a so-called sublimation printer. If you buy a direct-to-garment printer, it was built from scratch to do one thing, direct-to-garment printing. In the case of sublimation printers, we utilize existing printers that are already being mass-produced, that have a good reputation, good reliability, and then we at Sawgrass will choose printers that will actually process sublimation dye properly. Not every printer can do it, okay? And then we manufacture our sublimation dyes to the parameters of the particular printers that we support, okay? But it's worth knowing that these are not built from scratch printers from the ground up that cost $25,000. Okay, your typical startup package for a Ricoh 3110 is probably, and I don't know the exact prices at Pro World, okay, but probably in the range of say $500 to $525. Okay, so that really is a lot cheaper than direct-to-garment printing, or that first embroidery machine I had that was $25,000. But yeah, all the things you can do it incredible. Okay, all right. So our first step is we're going to create an image. We don't have any specialized software for sublimation. We can use Illustrator, we can use CorelDRAW, we can use Photoshop. Create that image with whatever your off-the-shelf graphic software is. A lot of our products have unique shapes. And you know from working with artwork, that's almost always in a rectangular version when you're working on it. So how do you make it fit something round? In this case, I want to do a coaster. Most of our manufacturers of blanks have created templates to help you set up your artwork, and you can download the templates. For example, here I'm going to do this particular coaster, and I downloaded the template for it. And I was working in CorelDRAW, so I was able to download this. Pretty nice. I was able to download a CRD file of it, so it's a true vector file. The blue represents the actual size of the coaster, and the green is a little over bleed area. We typically make our artwork slightly larger, so we have a little bit of a margin for error, though we hate to use that phrase, right? Okay, so if you're working in CorelDRAW using a power clip function, all you do is you combine these two elements together, use power clip, and what it does is it cuts and crops the artwork to fit that exact template. Okay, so now you're ready, your artwork's ready to go, it's sized right, you're ready to send it on to the printer. And we always recommend to, use your copy and paste feature and go ahead and do as many of the same thing at the same time as you can on the output. Makes it a little bit more efficient, right? If you're a Photoshop user, you can use the layers function. Either one works pretty well for that. So we're going to output that and print it onto sublimation transfer paper. Now the first time you actually print something out with sublimation, the colors look kind of muted, but they come to life when we apply heat to it. Here I printed out 4 coaster images. Now I have the coasters. You can see we're putting a little piece of tape. This is called heat tape. It looks like Scotch tape. Don't confuse the two. Okay, because this has to stand up to 400 degrees under the heat press. But this is going to hold the coaster in place with the artwork as we move it over to the heat press and put it into position. You can see here in the image the artwork certainly is slightly larger than the coaster. We did that on purpose. Now we're going to move over to the heat press, close it down. Most products are 400 degrees for 1 minute. Okay, there's some variations with some products, but that's what most of them are. Takes, like I said, about 1 minute here. You open it up. You immediately rip the paper off. This is called a hot peel process. Discard that paper. The paper does not stay behind. Some transfers, you're actually leaving the physical material behind. Not the case here. The paper is temporary. It just carries the ink. That's all it does. It's called carrier paper for that particular reason. Press time, as you see, was 1 minute. The printing time for those 4 was about 35 seconds. So it's not a very lengthy process. We can get this done pretty quick, okay? And there we go. Say 2 to 3 minutes for most applications. We got, in this case, 4 done. All right. So let's move on a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about sublimation graphics real quick. I mentioned that you can use really any graphics program, but we specifically recommend at Sawgrass that you stick with the Adobe Illustrator, Photoshop, maybe even Photoshop Elements, or CorelDRAW. Okay, that's our recommendations. They're proven to be very reliable programs, and we also have some software drivers to help your printer do a better job of delivering the ink that like to interface with these particular programs, and that's one of the reasons we recommend it. When we look at DPI, 300 DPI really is pretty much max of what you would use. The human eye for this particular type of process really can't distinguish above about 265 DPI. So if you really cram a design full of DPI, you won't get anything better on the output for sublimation. You'll just use more ink, and you may slow your printer down because it takes longer to transfer a big design. So they'll go crazy with your DPI. It's amazing how really good clarity you can get for a fairly low DPI. When we go to generate color, this is basically, we call it a 4-color process, but it's really 3. Okay, we have 4 basic colors in the printer: cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Okay, but if you mix black with any of the others, you get black. So the reality is we got cyan, magenta, and yellow, and we mix those together to be able to create what we want that comes out. And so in our graphics programming, when we're setting up designs, we're essentially setting up color coding that goes all the way through the system down to the printer to tell how to print the inks onto the paper to be able to get what we want. Okay. Well, one of the biggest challenges for any type of digital printing, and it doesn't have to be sublimation, okay, is getting the image to come out the way that you want it to. You've probably seen this if you have an inkjet printer at home and you want to print photographs. You go and print it out on paper, and guess what? It's not what you thought it was going to be. Okay, same thing with just basic graphics. Why is this? Well, there's a lot of reasons why this is, but I'm just going to give you a real quick overview of that, not too deep, on color management. Okay, we're working with our monitor. Our monitor is using a system called RGB, where we combine red, green, and blue to create the images that we want. And if we combine equal amounts of all 3 colors, red, green, and blue, we get the color white. Absence of color is black, and then different percentages yield everything else. If you look at a printer, we're using a process called CMY. In the case of CMY, if you have equal percentages of all 3, cyan, magenta, and yellow, you get black. If you have absence of color, it's white, and then any other percentages give you a range of color. Now, that range of color is something we can refer to as gamut. Okay, and the gamut is different for different devices. For example, the monitor using RGB, this thumbnail image here represents the visible spectrum of color that the human eye can see, and the dotted line represents what the monitor is able to do. Pretty big range. When we go down into the printer, you can see it's a much smaller range. So if you're just randomly working with colors on the screen and choosing, say for example, up here in the top area of this green, is there a direct match over here? No, there's not. So your computer will try to figure that out for you, but in many cases you may be working with colors here that you can't translate to over here. So you get a variation of that color. And then there's other things along the way that all affect color. Like I said, I don't want to get too deep into that. The key is for you to have a process, some type of maybe a software interface that helps you manage the color and keep it consistent as you go through the system. Okay? Part of that begins with you working within the range of color that you can actually manage with your printer. So if when you're on your computer you're only working with that range of color, then we already know that the printer can print it. That's pretty important stuff. But how do you know that when you're working on your computer? Well, we figured that out at Sawgrass. Okay, when you buy the Sublimation ink from ProWorld, then you can download a free driver that you install, which is called Power Driver. And the Power Driver helps you manage, the ink through the system. It also helps you manage some of the colors as well. One of the things with that is we develop a specific color palette for each printer ink combination out there, so that we are able to give to you a baseline of color to kind of get started with. And without getting too deep into that, you're able to actually upload that color palette into CorelDRAW or Photoshop or Illustrator, so that you're always working with a very specifically defined palette of color. You can see right here you have all these color palettes that you can choose from built into your graphics program, but we include one that's designed specifically for your printer and ink. Okay, and then it's going to help you as you go through if you start working with that. We also recommend that you take the basic palette and you print that out. Print it out on the sublimation transfer paper and then actually sublimate it onto something so you can see the final colors. Usually white metal. Get a sheet of white coated metal, put it on there. It's a color chart. All the colors have names and they also have RTB codes on them, so that you can, when you take this chart now that you've printed it out, sublimated it onto something, you hold the chart up, you know exactly what the colors look like in that palette. Now you may be thinking, hey, that palette looks kind of small. You can expand the palette. That's a nice thing about it too, is that you can actually expand the range of color and then build bigger palettes, and you can record them and save them and all that. So you can do all kinds of neat things with this, okay? Again, I don't want to get too deep into it, but this enables you to do things like spot color matching, where you need to find a very specific color of red. You can go and choose one out of the palette, and then you can expand that into a wider range of reds that revolve around that original one. So, you know, working through that, you're able to match all kinds of colors and expand your horizons, and it's very easy to use, and it's available free to you, okay? Something that we put together for sublimation users. Now we also have to talk about the effects of surface color. You know, we talked a little bit about how some of the devices manage things, but the surface color we put things on actually affects the ink color. You may have heard that you can only sublimate on white. That's not true, okay? You can sublimate on a lot of different colors, but white is the best color, and not only for sublimation, but for any digital ink, white is the best color. Digital inks are considered transparent, meaning that when we put digital ink onto something, the background color can be affecting that surface color that went there together. Okay, so you see this problem with other things like direct-to-garment printing too. Okay, white is best because we're talking about sort of a neutralized color that we're putting everything else on, so we get the best color, you know, quality out of that. Most of your sublimation blanks are white. Okay, where you run into the challenges though is with apparel, because apparel comes in a lot of different colors. You see here, for example, that we have the Eagles logo, and it's worth mentioning right now that we don't have the color white available for sublimation because we're using 3 colors of ink: cyan, yellow, magenta. If you try to blend those together, there's no combination of those 3 that make the color white. Okay, white is absence of color in the world of CMYK. So the way that we do white is we leave those areas open. Actually, your software leaves that area open, and when we go to print it, because it's open, the background color serves as white if we put it on white. Okay, but you can imagine if I put that on a pink shirt, what happens? The eagle is going to be pink, that's going to be pink, that's going to be pink. Okay, that becomes a bit of a problem. When we go into dark colors, we run into another problem. With sublimation, the sublimation ink must always be darker than the background color. Okay, so people ask, can you sublimate a black shirt? Sure you can, just can't see it. Okay, so in reality, no, you probably cannot. You definitely cannot. Okay, so sublimation is best for whites, lighter colors. When we get into darks, we really start to limit the sublimation colors that we can use in our image. Now, in the world of screen printing, in the world of direct-to-garment printing, they actually use something called white ink that is an engineered ink that is applied separately, and in the case of screen printing, it's cured with heat. In the case of DTG, with chemicals. And then what they did was they created a white base, is what they did. Basically, they just turned the area they want to print of that shirt into a white, okay, instead of black. And then they put the rest of the colors on top. And that makes all their colors brilliant. That means all the areas that need to be white were left open because it was put on that white base. We do not have the ability to do a white base. I mean, one of the problems with sublimation, it's not a problem, but the realities of sublimation is that if you put down a white base, you would prevent the sublimation dye, when it turns into a gas, from actually penetrating into the polyester fibers of the shirt. So it would basically negate the process. So we do not have white ink, therefore we cannot do dark colors with sublimation. Okay. Another thing just to be aware of, yes, I told you we can do light colors, but here's a good example I was just mentioning before. All the areas that we left that were supposed to be white when we put on the yellow shirt are now yellow. But you'll also notice the colors of the image are slightly different than they are over here. That's that background yellow affecting it. We can tweak the image and pretty much get the colors we want, but we can't recreate the color white. Okay, but this is only a problem on apparel. It's not a problem anywhere else. Okay, because everything else that you buy is white to begin with, and we do what was called full bleed from edge to edge. This right here could be a mouse pad, it could be a photo panel, it could be a award plaque, whatever. When you buy it, the area to be sublimated is white, and we'll completely cover it with ink from edge to edge as part of our decoration. So here, I'm going to put a photo on there. You know, if this was a mouse pad, I would not start with a black mouse pad and then add the wolf. Okay, in this particular case, I started with a white mouse pad, and then the black background was just part of the whole image I created. So this is, not a real big issue, because we do more sublimation on non-apparel than we do on anything else, and on non-apparel, lack of white ink is not an issue. It's only on apparel we run into that problem. Okay. Okay, sublimation cost. It's a pretty low process. Wow, it's a pretty low cost process is what I meant to say. Sublimation ink is a penny per square inch or less. Okay, a penny per square inch or less. So it's not a lot of cost that goes into actually, producing something. As an example, I took this particular iPhone cover was $3.25. I don't know what the cost is from Pro World. Okay, I'm just telling you this is one that I went and chose somewhere. It's $3.25. The image cost on that, based on square inch, was 13 cents. Labor and overhead, we put an arbitrary number of $2. So our total production cost here was about $5.38 to put it together. Okay, these have retailed. We did some surveys across the country, and we found these were retailing for as much as $35 when they were personalized. Okay, personalized, we were seeing as high as $35, which you may be saying, oh, that's too high. Okay, so if you sold it for $35, your margin is $29.62. If you sold it for $25, it's $19.62. That's not too bad either. But I will tell you, I went into Walmart the other day, and I saw one of these on the wall in their customer service area, and they were listing it for $28.95. $28.95 Walmart price. So Walmart sold it for $28.95. I'm always going to sell it for more. Okay, because everybody expects it to be cheap at Walmart. But just keep that in mind. When we personalize something, put a photo on there, we can get some pretty good, decent amount out of it, and it didn't cost that much to make. Now, how many of these can I produce per hour? Not too bad. If I did one at a time, my print time is not 1 minute. The print time on this thing was about 15 seconds, but I put 1 minute. Okay, a prep time of 1 minute of getting that image and putting that little piece of heat tape, taking over the heat press. Put 1 minute for the heat press. Came out to about 3 minutes. So I could do, in theory, if I'm doing one at a time, I could do 20 per hour. Artwork, I didn't really include artwork time in there, but really in that 3 minutes, that particular thing, pretty easy to do. So maybe it took you 5 minutes with the artwork. It doesn't take you too long to take someone's photograph and add a little bit of lettering on there. But keep in mind that with our printers, we can print multiple images at the same time. So that's 20 pieces per hour if I'm doing one at a time, but I can actually, with the Ricoh 3110, I can print at least 6 of those per sheet of paper. Even if they're different images, I can get 6 physically on one sheet of paper. And in that case, I would get, 120 per hour or something. So we can move this stuff through pretty quick. And typically, with artwork, we try to build things into templates so that the first time it takes a long time, but after that, it goes a little bit easier, a little bit faster. So it's not a very expensive process. That's the beauty of it. Now, the power of perception, we kind of switch gears and start talking about making money and marketing and all those things. There's a lot going for sublimation. Okay, as I always like to say, it's only worth what someone will pay for it. Therefore, you must raise the customer's perception of perceived value. Okay, in each and everything that you do, and that's what we're able to do with sublimation if we're kind of creative and approach things in a unique way. For example, this is something I did not do. This is something that someone else did. Lady came into her shop. She was looking to put this onto something. Her husband had written this about their newborn baby girl, and it was all emotional and everything. And so she was asking my friend for an idea of put this on something to put in the nursery. And the friend kind of keyed in on the woman's emotion and suggested doing this on like a plaque and making it look kind of like parchment paper and whatnot. And what do you think she charged for it? Okay. She actually asked me what I would have charged for it, and I was in that $30 range, and she laughed at me and said she charged $125. I was amazed. But it was really about the perceived value. Okay, she got $125 for this because in the eyes of the customer, this thing was way up there because it was special. And that's something I always took with me. I learned a lot from that particular conversation of working on that power of perception. Personalization, anytime we can put it in there, can do a lot for perception. Okay, when we put a picture on something, we take it to a higher level. You could have done a plaque. This is a very nice, heavy wooden plaque that was done for Mrs. Gomez. Okay, and you could have just, in the world of engraving, it would just have been engraved. There wouldn't have been any colored graphics or anything else. I mean, it would have been engraved, and you're done with it, right? In this case, it's a photo plaque, and that moment was captured and preserved forever through sublimation. And she can look back at that years from now and recapture that moment, remember those kids. Those kids could look at it and remember, a very important moment in their life as well. So anytime we can start putting pictures in there, we do increase that perceived value. I mean, that's, pictures are a great way to personalize something. They really are. Over and over again within sublimation, we want to turn ordinary into extraordinary. And keeping in mind that we can make money with ordinary, but we'll make more money, we get better margins at extraordinary, but sometimes the extraordinary doesn't cost more than the ordinary. Okay, here this is sublimated. This is a hinged photo panel, and the family, that's worth a lot of money to the family. Okay, but here we've done something where we took it sort of a different level, where we have what I call a digital birth certificate, where it says Hannah Elizabeth, has her picture, has down here birth date, wait, all these wonderful things. This on the right really it cost a little bit more for the blank substrate than the one on the left, but really at the end of the day, I can charge probably double for the one on the right than I can for the one on the left. Okay, but it didn't cost me double to produce it. Capturing those special moments of life, again, graphically enhancing it, raise that perceived value, give it a theme. And then you can template that kind of stuff. This is one of my favorite ones because, right, again, this is a basic photo plaque. We're talking about $6 or so, and it has about 50 cents worth of ink on it, and then whatever your labor in it there. But just pure materials cost maybe $6.50. Okay, and it's worth easily to that family, $18 to $25. Okay, of that player. But here I chose a substrate that actually looks like a football. Put some different graphics into it. The only thing missing is it should have his name on there. Same image, exact same image. This to produce over here might have been I don't know, $9, so it was maybe $2.50 more. But I could probably sell it for $45. Okay, at least the bottom 40s. So I'm getting a lot more money without a lot of extra effort. Okay, again, the graphics kind of put it into it, and the different substrate. Talking about different substrates here again. Do a lot of sports things here, right? But we have a basic photo panel. This is an action sports photo panel. This particular one has a little round cutout. Well, it's not a cutout. It's a rounded area in the corner, and you can sublimate any image you want in there. But really, just look at the whole difference here. Okay, he's in an action pose, but she's in an action pose, and we put the lightning bolt in there and her name and all this stuff. The one on the right is going to sell from the one on the left, and the material costs for both of them are very, very, very comparable. Engraving, a lot of engraving is done out there, and I've mentioned this before with the awards. You go into the photo award end of things, and this particular photo award captured the moment, has the graphics, has all the color in here. That, is that. This costs less to produce than that. You can produce this in a fraction of the time of that, and yet you can sell this one for more money. So, there's something to be said for that. Where I live on the coast of North Carolina, and we have one element of people that really love hurricanes, and that's the surfers, because they get the big waves. They don't really love the hurricane, they just love the waves, okay? But you know what? This is where we can merge that photo and those graphics together again and put them on a shirt. And when I do that, I can personalize the shirt with the name of the hurricane on the bottom, but it's that guy. And we've sold these things like $29.95. For a single shirt with the guy's image on the back. You just take some good pictures and blend it together, and boom, you're done. Pretty cool, easy to do stuff. But everything is it's always about ordinary into extraordinary. I was mentioning that a photo really enhances, and a photo can work in the corporate world too. Okay, and here's a promotional product. The promotional product is a mouse pad, and typically people on a promotional product, all they put is a logo. Right, and that's about it. They get some branding, but that's about it. A good promotional product is something that people will use, and also has a call to action. Okay, so I went from this boring white mouse pad to bring it to life with all these graphics here. And this one's really cool. This is a great idea, because what Sally Ann's is they are a hamburger fast food operation that delivers our food, right? So if you're working at your computer with this particular mouse pad, you're staring at what? A picture of that cheeseburger all day long. In fact, that picture right there tells people what Sally Ann's does. Imagine if they put your hand over the cheeseburger. You don't know what she does until you read the word menu, okay? But you really don't know what Sally Ann's does. So if it was only the Sally Ann's logo, you may not be aware of what it is they do. Cheeseburger says we do this. Cheeseburger also makes you hungry, unless you don't like cheeseburgers. Okay, and then there's a menu to help you satisfy that hunger. okay? Or maybe to prompt you to be even hungrier since there's a menu. But you satisfy it by calling the phone number or ordering online, okay? That's a fantastic promotional product that has that picture of the burger on there, and it does what it was designed to do, and that's important. Okay, these are the kind of things you put in front of a customer. It helps you make sales. So at the end of the day, always be thinking about how you can enhance things and make them more exciting. I am not a graphic artist. I know how to buy interesting graphics, and I can see things in my head, but I can't get them on paper, or on the computer. Somebody comes to you and they want a championship, they want a baseball, and you get a piece of clip art with a baseball and put some text around it, it'd be rather boring, but there's some really cool graphics out there. This is a ready-made graphic. The lettering was added, but the graphic itself, ready-made. Okay, you buy it online, download it, boom, add your graphics to it. Another example here, you got the football, you got the killer football. There's a lot of great graphics out there, good quality stuff that can really make something more exciting. If people are excited by what you create, you can get higher margins and you'll sell more. Okay, they'll carry that excitement, share it with their friends. That's important. Now, how you package your products goes a long way too. And when I talk about packaging, I'm not talking about putting it in a box. Okay, I'm talking about how you describe your products, how you group things together, the kind of message that you get out of your products. And I was just going to show you a couple of different categories here of things. We saw this one at the very beginning, but the idea of building a package is you build a sample package. So, for example, complementary items, okay? You don't want to show somebody, if they want to buy a mug, you want to show them a bunch of complementary items. You can't. So this right here, of course, is targeted to a sports group. This here is targeted to a hotel or motel. Okay, you're probably not going to be able to sell to Holiday Inn, whatever, but more of bed and breakfast and inns and boutique hotels. Everything in that picture was sublimated. All those products are sublimated, and that's amazing how many things. As you think about the rooms, typical room would have the serving tray. It would have 2 or 4 coasters, depending on the size of the room. You would have 2 or 4 mugs. You'd have all these other elements. There's a lot of pieces here that you can sell to every single room in that inn. And then you have other things that can appear in the eating areas and the welcome areas and all this other stuff. But you see, the idea is if you walk in with that package to an inn, they probably don't have any clue of that wider range of things that you can do. And that's the idea of when you're talking to people about your products, is giving them all these other ideas. We also call that cross-selling. Here's another category, and this was for school. And you can see all these different things that are carrying the school mascot. So maybe you're talking to about buying spirit products and things that they can sell for fundraisers, keyword fundraiser, all right in there. This particular one here is the wedding marketplace. Another huge place, weddings. Okay, it's a lot that can be done there with sublimation. Just a small sample of the things. I've actually taught a full seminar on how to market to the wedding industry. This happens to be a soccer team out of Europe, but you get the idea. Everything there is a nice package that was built to give people ideas, get them excited. Okay. This is one that's a corporate one, and this one I particularly like because I didn't necessarily plant the exact same logo on everything. For a corporate client, we have sales reps awards, we have the signage here, we got some of the phone covers, we got promotional products, we got a wide range of things here. Everything is carrying their basic logo, but we made it very artistically diverse across all the different products. So, kind of winding down here, and we'll start taking all your questions here in just another couple of minutes. I'm almost there, okay? Always think outside the box, okay? Dare to be different. And there's a lot of neat things out there that you can do. One of the hottest selling things, of course, is the cell phone covers, iPhone, Galaxy, tablets, things like that. Okay, I'm just going to run through some of these different things here. Jewelry, there is sublimatable jewelry out there, and you can do a lot of cool things with the sublimatable jewelry. All kinds of different, unique products that you can use in the kitchen or to restaurants or to retail stores that sell kitchen stuff. I mean, there's just a lot of neat things you can do out there, but there's a lot of neat sublimatable products. You just have to kind of explore. All kinds of different wraps. You got the wine bottle carrier, and then you got that one's really cute, a boot. Okay. Here are some more unique things, anything from floor mats to wall switch covers, and etc. Okay, and again, I'm just kind of running through these real quickly, just showing some of the things that I've been able to put together with sublimation over time. Fishing lures, flags, flip-flops. Flip-flops are very popular where I live. You can do a lot with flip-flops. A lot of cool things. The pet marketplace. Never underestimate the value of this marketplace. In 2012, consumers spent something like $225 million on Halloween costumes for their pets. It's crazy. Pro Photo, where you work with professional photographers to do, top level photography, typically done on aluminum coated panels. Ceramic tile. This is a tile mural that was put together using individual tiles. All of them are coated, just like the stuff you get at Home Depot, but it has a coating on it. This was a total of $600 cost to put together, and it sold for $6,000, including mounting it on the wall. And then finally, we have thinking inside the box, just to show you there's a lot of different markets out there. Okay, and that's a memorial products marketplace, another one I've done a full-length seminar on. Just to quickly point out to what you're seeing there is these are examples of what are called casket cap panels. Originally these were done in fabric and mounted to cardboard templates to install into the cap of a casket, but the trend to do now is to use metal panels that are not necessarily that big, but smaller metal panels, same kind of imaging, and they're attached in there with double-sided tape. Funeral director puts it in there. Or you do in plaques that can be put on people's mantles and whatnot out there. So just another thing out there. Okay, the keys to making money with sublimation is don't focus on price. Okay, I mean, price is always there, right? But really, I'm serious. Someone else always do it for less. Remember that. There's a rule I learned a long time ago. Someone else always do it for less. If I give it to you for free, someone will pay you to take it. I mean, it just never ends, right? So what I want you to focus on is focus on being the best. Very, very cliche, but really, focus on these elements. Great graphics, unique products, creative packaging, the right equipment, and go where the money is. Okay, and what I mean by that is focus on specific market targets. Maybe you want to do fire departments. Good. Do fire department locally and then go out to every fire department you can find for 100 miles. Okay? I mean, if that's your market, go where that money is. Too many people don't leave their neighborhood for some reason. Okay? Really, I've been involved in product decoration for over 25 years, and my biggest successes were with targeted markets. It's what we call niche markets. And yeah, we traveled a lot to pursue that niche, but that's where the money was. Okay? So I want to thank you for attending. Again, my name is Jimmy Lamb with Sawgrass. Here's my email address up here. I'm going to invite Matt and Danielle to come back in so we can take some of your questions here. I've seen a lot of questions coming in. We do appreciate that because, that's what we're here for. And if you have questions of Pro World, you can always email in at service@proworldinc.com. Okay, give me just a minute here while I go to the top of the list, and we'll kind of start running through some of these questions. Now, while I'm looking some of the questions over, Matt, did you have any thing you wanted to add, and maybe you have some specials going on or something you want to share with everyone?
I just want to let everyone know out there that we have put together a few different starter packages that we're selling that include our sublimation equipment and sublimation items. And also, we'll be in conjunction with Sawgrass. When you buy one of those starter packages between now and Christmas, we'll be throwing in an extra black ink cartridge. So all you need to do is just put those orders in online. You'll automatically get a additional black ink cartridge.
Okay, so that sounds pretty exciting. Okay, especially kind of the end of the year, nice Christmas present for yourself, Okay, so I got several different questions here. I'm going to go ahead and jump on a couple of them. Do we need to stuff the shirts to keep them from bleeding through? No. If you're going to sublimate apparel, first of all, make sure you're buying good quality products for sublimation. And one of the things that you should be aware of is just because a shirt is polyester doesn't mean it will sublimate well. So you really want to look at the people that are actually offering shirts that are designed for sublimation. But when you do a sublimated shirt, you can just lay it right on top of the press and just sublimate directly onto it. Okay? You don't have to stuff anything inside of it. It doesn't bleed through. Okay, next question. Do we need to apply exact pressure I have a dial pressure press. You know, exact pressure is useful, and the reason it's useful is it helps you repeat. You may experiment to find the right pressure. What we recommend is a medium pressure, which is typically about 40 psi if you actually have a dial pressure. But like I say, the beauty of having that dial is every time you go back to do something, you can redial in a certain pressure. But as far as having to be an exact pressure, just a good medium pressure on everything works pretty well, because a lot of people don't have those dials. Does ProWorld sell the polymer coated items shown on the screen? Yes, ProWorld does carry sublimatable blanks.
Yeah, we do. We have a line right now of about 100 products or more, and that list of products is growing every day. If any of you out there have suggestions for products you'd like to see us carrying, feel free to email us at service@proworldinc.com. But you can look for more products being added over the next couple of months as we really ramp up into this industry.
Not all polymers can be heated to 400 degrees, yes or no? Now you're starting to talk about thermoplastics, and when you start looking at all the different thermoplastics out there, there are different ranges. For example, if you look at nylon, nylon has a lot of the same properties as polyester, but nylon does have a lower melting point. There are some different polymers that are in different classifications that have different temperatures for a melting point. The majority of what we're using in this industry, because you're buying manufactured items that were manufactured for sublimation, they do withstand 400 degrees. When you get into the polyester apparel marketplace, polyester apparel typically withstands the 400 degrees as well. The challenges you find with some of the different polyester apparel products is that the manufacturer may have used an additive, for example, an antimicrobial that can interfere with the sublimation gas. That doesn't mean an antimicrobial will interfere. Some of them do, okay? That's what we found. We found some good antimicrobial and coated shirts. But that's why I always suggest that if you're looking to get a shirt for sublimation, that you talk to the supplier of the shirt to make sure that they've actually tested it for sublimation. They know that it sublimates well, okay? Let's see. The vendor I purchased my system from installed an ICC profile on my printer. You know, they're different resellers. Sometimes work with different color management processes, and in the case of some different printers, you may have unique ICC profiles written for the printer. An ICC profile is basically a color palette. We recommend that if you're going to do sublimation and you have bought any of the systems that, for example, ProWorld sells, that you would install our power driver, because it's designed specifically for that ink and that particular printer. That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with an ICC profile, okay? Just for troubleshooting, if you contact, our tech support, for example, they're going to ask you what you've installed, and then they're going to try and work through. But if you've installed a third-party software for color management, they're not going to be able to help you. That doesn't mean it's bad, okay? Any improvements with fading issues due to heat and or UV? As far as our ink is concerned, heat isn't an issue, but UV is. Sublimation dye is not UV resistant. It will fade over time in direct sunlight. How much time depends on how direct and intense the sunlight is, okay? So there's no really number on that because it varies depending on location. Now, if you're having any type of fading for things that are not in direct sunlight, then there may be an issue with the coating, and we always recommend you go back and talk to whoever it was that supplied that to you. How do you know if an item has a polymer coating? You purchase items from people like ProWorld who are only going to, they're going to have a whole group of sublimatable products, and therefore you will know it has a polymer coating or it's a natural polymer because it's being, presented to you as a sublimatable item. And it's interesting too, because I'm serious. When you look at some of these things that have polymer coatings, they look just like anything that doesn't have a polymer coating. So that's why you want to make sure you are buying sublimatable items. I'm scanning the list. We have some duplicate questions, so I'll try to kind of group things together. Can I use an Epson C88 printer, and what transfer paper do I need to use? I wouldn't use the C88. I mean, the C88 is an old printer. It's one that we have supported in the past with ink, but I wouldn't go that way. If I was going to go and start printing, I would go look at the Ricos, because the Ricos really have a lot of things the Epsons don't, especially an Epson C88. For example, the Rico, as long as you leave it plugged in and turned on, it can do a self-maintenance program, and that means that your ink's not going to dry out and cause you problems down the road. With an Epson, if you don't constantly use it or constantly manually do head checks, ink that's not used is going to dry out in the heads, and I really wouldn't go that direction. You should be able to order supplies for the Rico from whoever you purchase your Rico from. What paper do I need for doing cups and plates? You're going to use pretty much the same paper on everything, but I will tell you there are some papers cut. For example, mugs, you can buy paper that's been cut in strips that are more the size of a mug, but you can take a regular sheet of transfer paper and just cut it down to whatever you need it to be. Pretty much the same paper is used on every product. When I sublimate mugs, the pictures sometimes look kind of red. How do I make it look great? That is something that you would have to probably adjust within your color management programs. Now, if you're using the power driver that we've created, there are some settings in there where you can change some of the saturation levels of the images, but it's one where if you want to follow with me, I'll put you in touch with tech support people that can kind of walk you through that to help you maybe make some adjustments in your color. So you see my email address online, feel free, and that's to everybody, feel free to contact me and we'll help you out with that. Can you put rhinestone decorations on sublimation? As long as the rhinestone application temperature is lower, it should be under 300 degrees. If you reheat sublimation, it will turn into a gas and it will fade. So if you want to put something on top of sublimation using heat, you can do that, but you really prefer your heat to be under 300 degrees and not to be there too long, okay? Can a person, I knew this was coming, it's a good question though. Can a person apply the polymer coating on a product themselves? The answer would be sort of, technically yes, but not recommended. There are kits available in the marketplace, but the problem with putting a polymer coating is if you have any inconsistencies in that coating, you'll have inconsistencies in the sublimation. And for anybody that's ever done spray painting, you already know what I'm talking about. If you were to spray paint white on black, immediately you see all the imperfections. Okay, you see too much paint in one place, not enough in the other. So it's the same thing with coatings. You have to make sure first of all the coating actually bonds to what you're putting it on. So when it's done in a factory where they have the computer controlled machinery, they're using primers and things to make sure that the polymer coating actually bonds with the surface of what they're putting it on, and then the machinery ensures that it's the same thickness and coverage throughout. So it's very difficult to do it yourself and get a really good coating job out of it. I've read about outline of transfer paper appearing on a garment. That's called a transfer line. If you're actually sublimating apparel, there is a process, and we call it the foam process, where you're going to use a sheet of high temperature foam underneath, and you're going to use a much lower settings on pressure and time than you may be used to. and this can vary with some of the different shirts. And rather than getting too long and drawn out in that, maybe we'll actually do a webinar in the future at Pro World on that particular thing, because doing apparel is a little different than doing everything else. You can also email me, and I'll be glad to give you some more in-depth instructions. But yes, if you run into this problem, there are ways to make adjustments to get rid of transfer lines. But occasionally, depending on the shirt that you've chosen, we've run across some shirts you just can't get rid of. That's where it goes back to finding shirts that really were, that really have been tested thoroughly for sublimation. When washing and drying the garment, will the sublimated image fade? No. Sublimation will not fade when washed. Okay. Now, if you're working with a blended apparel, a blended fabric, like a 50-50, the first time you wash that, you will see some fading. Because what happened was when you actually sublimated a 50-50, some of the sublimation dye got caught up in the cotton fibers, but it wasn't a permanent bonding. So when you wash it, it actually has a little bit more fading in it. Okay, but if it's a 100% polyester product that doesn't have any bizarre coatings added to it, and you sublimate it properly, it will not fade when you wash it. And we encourage you to go buy some sample shirts, sublimate them, and throw them in the washing machine. And put them on hot, run them through. Test things out. That's good to do before you actually go out and sell things. If you're doing a lot of dark shirts, what are the colors that will sublimate? The sublimation ink must always be significantly darker than the color of the shirt. You can do a red shirt with black ink and maybe navy ink. You could do a royal blue shirt, again, with black ink. You really can't go into anything darker than that. And you're very limited on the colors you can apply with sublimation. We typically say stick with lights and whites when you're doing apparel for sublimation. So how do you press a mug? You use a mug press. It's a different type of heat press for mugs, and the mug just drops in and it wraps all the way around the mug and applies heat all the way around the sides. Can I sublimate on Dacron sailcloth? Never tried it. Dacron is a form of polyester, but I haven't tried it. Okay, I don't know what else is in there. That's one of the things where you have to go and get a sample of it and go play with it. And if you're going to put it on sailcloth, you're going to have it outdoors, so it's going to be in the UV. It's going to fade over time, but everything fades. Okay, everybody forgets that. All inks fade in direct sunlight over time. So the reality becomes test it, and see kind of what you can get out of it. What's the largest print you can print without splicing? Depends on your printer and your heat press combination. If it's a Ricoh 3110, the largest paper is 8.5 by 14. You can't actually print to the edges, so it's probably 7.5 by 13 is your largest image for that printer. If you went to the Ricoh 7100 with the optional bypass tray, the largest sheet of paper is 13 by 19, and with your largest image being like 12 by 18. If you need bigger than that, then you have to look into printers that start approaching more of a wide format type of operation. So, but make sure you buy the right size heat press too. Your heat press should always be slightly larger than the largest image you can print with your printer. I do DTG, and the surface smoothness of the shirt is highly important. Can I print on rough surfaces with dye sub like towels and fleece? Yeah, the reason you see such a difference with DTG is going on the outside of the fibers, okay, and sublimation is penetrating into the fibers. But yeah, if you actually try to do something like fleece is a bad example. Towels, if a towel had a lot of pile, it's not going to sublimate that well because you got that pile that's all different heights and everything. I mean, the only thing that really does good pile well is embroidery if you put the right kind of underlay on it. But as far as everything else is going into the surface instead of just being on the surface, so you can get some pretty good results with fleece and very low pile tiles. You can do. I've done tiles. You just got to find the right ones. How do you press tiles if you have a clamshell heat press with a limit of a 1/4 inch thickness? You buy a swing away press. It's actually a good point that you brought up. And this is one, I didn't really talk about heat presses, but when you're looking at heat presses, you got to think about the thickness of what you're actually pressing. A lot of people bought a heat press to do a shirt and they don't really care. Clamshell worked great. But when you're doing plaques, when some of these wooden plaques are fairly thick, the acrylics are thick, the tiles, ceramic tiles can be thick, you usually get a much better result with a swing away heat press than a clamshell heat press, okay? Because if you try to put something thick in a clamshell, it doesn't come down with even pressure across the surface. Yeah, just to reiterate, anything that you do has to have a coating, including a coffee mug. So you buy, mugs for sublimation, and those can be done either in a mug press, which is round, so it drops in and gets all the sides. I've gotten a lot of questions about how to do a mug, and that's why I'm repeating this. There's also mug wraps available where you stretch a wrap around the mug and it holds the transfer against it, and then you put it in a convection oven. Can you put the mug into a microwave after you sublimate it? Certainly. What's the difference between applying heat transfers and sublimation? That's a big, long question, I hate to tell you, because so many people define heat transfers so many different ways. You basically have two types of heat transfers. You have one that is a digital transfer, which is what we're talking about with sublimation, where the ink goes on the transfer paper. You put it on the surface, you apply heat, the ink leaves the paper, it goes into the item being decorated. You open the heat press, you remove the paper, you throw it away. The other kind of heat transfer is you print onto some type of material, or you cut material in the case of vinyl. The material has adhesive on the back, and then the heat is applied and activates the adhesive to make it bond to the surface. Okay, and there's other kinds of digital heat transfers besides just sublimation. There are some designed to do cotton, which is a different type of ink. Okay, but a digital heat transfer, the paper is temporary. The film or material type of heat transfers, the paper is permanent. Is the Power Driver software available for Macs? Nope. In the case of Macs, though, there are some similar tools that are available, but it's a little different for Macs than for PC. Can you purchase hats with a polymer coating and be sublimated? There are hats that have been manufactured, typically out of polyester, that are designed for sublimation. A little tricky to do. You got to make sure it fits that heat press just right. It's tricky, trust me. I'm not big on that. We'll leave it at that. This webinar does have a video component. Right now we're not showing pictures, we just have a single screen. Someone's asking if they're supposed to be able to see something that says thanks for attending on the top. If you're not seeing that, then you're not seeing what the current video is. But prior to that, we had different slides that were being shown. Okay, it's 4:15 Eastern Time. Need to wrap up here. I know there's more questions I didn't get to. You have my email address on the screen. Just feel free to email me, okay, your questions. And the same thing with Pro World. Especially if this is about specific printers and packages and prices and all these things, make sure you send that over to Pro World. They're ready and waiting to help you out with any of that. I know, Danielle, you've been sitting there patiently in the background. Do you have anything you wanted to add in?
No, that pretty much sums it up. Thank you for everybody that attended today, and if you do have questions, please feel free to give us a call or send us an email. We'll be more than happy to help you out.
Excellent. Well, thanks for having me out today. I look forward to doing some more in the future. This one was kind of a generic, but I was talking to Matt a little bit earlier about doing some more webinars coming up in the future where we'll get a little bit more specific on maybe some certain applications and things. So keep your eyes open for that. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. Again, thanks for coming out, and we'll see you next time. Bye.